Hi and welcome to Mark's Motivational Podcast for another Authors Tuesday. Today I'm delighted to be welcome back Declan Cosson back on the podcast for the second time. He's published his second book, so thanks a lot for joining me again, Declan. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Yeah, no, it's welcome back. And so we'll probably just start by talking about the second book you have out there. The second book.
Okay, so the second book, if anyone wants to see it here, it's named Blood and Gears.
Very good.
Essentially, it can be best described as what would happen if Rudyard Kipling and Robert A. Heinlein wrote a book together. That's the best. In many ways, it's basically, so to give a simple plot summary, the story follows a 19-year-old New Yorker named Zach, who is conscripted into this army that's the Legion. So to give some context, you have this world government named Terra, which is fighting. It's centered in London, but it's a world government, and it's fighting these what are called machines, which are essentially these robots that were built during the Third World War, but turned against humanity. So it's but the main plot, that's just the backdrop. The main plot is basically that our hero Zach is conscripted into the main military, which is the Legion. It's this military basically of superhuman men, essentially, who fight this war. And after a battle goes terribly wrong, Zach finds a young boy named Dmitri who's separated from his parents. And basically, Zach and his squad, they get cut off from the military and they go on this quest to basically return the boy to his parents. There's other stuff happening in the book, but that's the simple summary of what this book is about.
Great. And how long did it take you to write this book, Declan? How have you been working on this one?
That's an interesting saga, because I actually started, the first time I had the idea for this book was in 2017. So I was like 17 years old in my second last year of secondary school. I was still doing my leaving cert when I started work on this. I started by writing kind of extracts of like what different scenes. And then what I did after that is that I pieced all these extracts together while on a holiday in Rome. So it was during particularly hot summer in Rome, and I pieced the book together there. And then after that, it was really a long saga of getting it copy edited, getting it improved, expanding on the lore. Although I had started writing the book, like a lot of the deeper concepts and lore of the book didn't come till much later. Like, I didn't even call the nation Terra until like 2018. So it's like actually during Storm Emma's when I first started writing the lore about that. Before that, it was just humanity, but I just needed to give the nation a name.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
So do you think they kind of changed? Not the story didn't change much, but it kind of as you went on, it expanded.
It built up. It kind of like the characters themselves. Like it's what happens when you have something that you start and then it's like between 2017 and 2023. Like it's like the production process is absolutely going to change.
Yeah. Is it a novel or a book? Definitely.
I wouldn't know the difference. I mean, it's a novel in that it's not it's not like The Yearly Strange, which was just a collection of short stories. This is a firm novel with it, so more cohesive narrative, which I have to admit not only made it easier to promote because I knew exactly what to explain, but also, as you can see with the cover, so I just want to give a shout out that this cover was designed by my dad. He painted that. It was an oil painting by him, and what we did then is that we got it scanned in the Copper House. And I used that painting as a model for my book cover.
That's brilliant art, isn't it, Declan? It's really
yes, it is. It is. Well, that's why I want to promote it, but it's just so that you know that this was painted by my dad.
Yeah, got it. And
he's an artist.
Your dad does? Is that something or books?
It is.
Brilliant. Yeah.
He paints. What's interesting is that he mostly paints paintings of like horses or the landscape or like maybe a sailing boat. So it was a challenge for him to paint, this is a very different kind of painting where it's like, but it worked out.
Yeah, well, that's great to have family involved as well.
Yes, it is. Trust me, it's a massive booster.
Yeah, great. And how are you promoting the book, Declan? For people who are listening, what ways have you found the best way to promote it?
Oh, that's going to be a difficult one because I'm sorry, this is going to be a difficult thing to answer because I think the first is that I'm spreading among family and friends and people I know. That's my first part. Yeah. The second thing I'm doing is that I'm hoping to upload it onto a site called Ingram Spark, which is a site that will allow you to distribute the book. I tried it to begin with, but I messed up the process, so I'm basically hoping to fix. But that's just something I'm working on and fixing up at the moment in hope that I can promote it. I learned some hard lessons along the way there. Another thing is that I've done to promote is I've submitted it to the Book of the Year Awards on Reader's Favorite or Author's Favorite. I don't know if you're aware of that site. It's a site where you can promote your book, or at least hopefully get a review. Well, often you have to pay, but basically they have an award, and so I submitted the Blood and Gears for that.
Great stuff. That's brilliant. The best of luck. That sounds like a great.
I mean, thank you. I mean, I hope. Like, I don't think it's the best advice exactly. I'm sure there are people who are much better at marketing self-published books than I am. But and I've also uploaded it onto Goodreads. I mean, that's another thing I've done.
Great stuff, yeah. Because the more angles you cover, the better for yourself, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Well, that's the idea. It's like that's the plan. I mean, that's why I'm even. Yeah. This is why I was kind of eager to get on this podcast again, was to talk about the book.
Yeah, brilliant. And come here, have you approached libraries yourself? Have you thought about the libraries aspect?
I haven't yet.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's might be an idea for you, the library thing. But as well as that, the like I was going to ask you as well. When's the book launch? Have you organised a book launch for it?
I'm afraid I haven't had time to that because I've also been searching for work. And now eventually what I'm doing now is that I'm going to be working in France for 3 weeks. This is going way off topic, but it's just so that you explain it.
Yeah, great. And would you like to maybe read the summary of the book for people to get a feel for it, like the back page, so people kind of
I'll give you so just the back page,
just the summary of it.
Here we go. Brace yourself. In the wake of World War III, the militaristic state of terror is the last major bastion of human civilization, and its main army is the Legion, comprised of a race of genetically modified superhuman men known as Legionnaires, who are currently engaged in a total war with the armies of so-called machines, a race of robotic monsters. Amidst the chaos, 19-year-old Zach Harker is pressed into the Legion, where he fights a battle not only in the name of humanity, but in the name of his honor and principles as well.
Very good, very good. Yeah, that sounds.
Hope that was good, Mark.
It has a movie written all over, sci-fi movie.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah. Great stuff. Definitely worth going on that channel.
Mm-hmm. Well.
Yeah. And do you think any movies or books like that have inspired you with this book through the years of writing it?
I'd probably go horse mentioning the name of books and movies and play and like epics. I mean, probably. I think one of the main things that motivated me to write this book was that there were 2 particular genres that I liked when I was much younger, both as a boy and as an adolescent. The first genre would probably have been like TV shows, science fiction team TV shows like the Thunderbirds. I might have mentioned these shows before, but so shows where it's like you're in this world full of technology and machines and sci-fi and tech. Yeah. But the other genre that inspired me, as I mentioned Rudyard Kipling earlier, but essentially another genre that I enjoyed watching as a child but particularly as an adolescent, were like old war movies like Zulu or 55 Days of Peking or David Lean's films, if you've watched some of them, like real oldies like Lawrence of Arabia or Bridge Over the River Kwai, movies like that. And they're pretty solid movies like that of World War II as well. That had a boat come, so I decided, I think at one point, another thing that inspired me, because a lot of inspiration were some of the movies that were historical epics. Like there's a movie that you probably haven't known about, but it certainly had a profound impact on the way I wrote this book, called, I think it was called Centurion. It's basically based on the legend of the Lost Legion. And so we're like, you know, and if you read my Blood and Gears, you'll see some parallels between some of the stories around that, where it's like you have these very tough, manly guys. They're cut off in a wilderness from the rest of their people and the rest of their army, and it's like they have to find their way back to civilization. I mean, another thing that inspired me was also a lot of what will be called in the epic, heroic epics. So we can think of, for example, Beowulf. If you've heard, I'm sure we're aware of that story. It's like Beowulf, or a lot of Norse sagas, or another, probably a more famous and more familiar one would be one that's written way later, would be The Lord of the Rings. Probably the quintessential epic, The Lord of the Rings. And I'm certainly not on the scale of Tolkien. I cannot make up new languages and new places the way he did. But I guess in my own sense, I did want to combine, because that was another thing I enjoyed, especially as an adolescent, was The Lord of the Rings. Particularly the original stories. And yeah, so I guess there was a certain sense I wanted to translate some of those ideas and themes that Tolkien had into a more modern, technologically advanced setting. And so I don't know that I'd be going towards, if I was to come up with like another influence I might as well mention. Another influence I might as well mention is much more modern than the epic, is what was called at the time, or what is I think it was called the Boys' Book. So this was in the late 19th, particularly in Victorian England and even in Edwardian England, there was this genre of books, often about men in the empire somewhere. And it's like they were these military themed texts, adventure stories like King Solomon's Mines by Rider Haggard. Or there was Kim by Rudyard Kipling, which was basically the story of a young Irish orphan who he grows up in the British Raj and he becomes some sort of agent in the Raj. So the Raj, by the way, was this British rule in India. It was this entity that represented British authority in India at the time when Britain was this big empire.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, thanks a lot for explaining, because I suppose people that are listening and watching this podcast would think of stuff they liked and then relate it to your book as well. So that's great. Thanks a lot for that, you know.
Well, I did myself when I was growing up. It's like, as I said, like I drew a lot, which I think most novelists do. It's like you draw a lot on what came before. You know, if you look at someone like J.R. Tolkien, he drew his favorite text. One of his were the poems of the Anglo-Saxons, like Beowulf or The Wanderer, and he drew a lot on that. He drew a lot on Anglo-Saxon and British mythology when it came to crafting The Lord of the Rings, because that was his passion.
Yeah, oh, great. And have you got a good response for good read yourself, Declan? Have you have you got a good response so far?
Afraid not. Again, it's hard to get yourself out there because you're just millions of competition. I think it's like you have to get yourself noticed. It's like, so I hope to over time, but I think that's going to take a long haul.
Yeah, but I think a good way of a girl who was on the podcast previously, Declan, she made a good point of you just have to kind of go off in your car or go out for the day and bring the book with you and like bring it to different libraries.
Well, that's what I did. I mean, that's what I've done so far, and I'm hoping when I go to France, I'll be able to bring some copies of that book. I've bought author copies, so I hope to spread the word.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I can put it on my podcast, the links, and the information
Sure.
about it as well for people to buy
Thank
it.
you. Yeah.
No, of course. Yeah, I'm glad to be of service, as they say.
Hmm.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, and what's next for yourself? Are you working on much more stuff? Because the meetup every Saturday, the Inkslingers, is great for inspiration, isn't it?
Yeah, well, what I'm doing mostly is that I'm going through some of my older manuscripts and hoping to get them out.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I'm not sure what I'll be doing next because I mean this was kind of my big one. Blood and Gears was very much my big one,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so what I'll be doing next. However, what I might be doing next is a story that's actually going to be quite different. It's called so far my working title for it is called I think it's called the Cleave Sullus. So like it's that I know that's an Irish word for literally sword of light. And it's less of a science fiction epic and more of a pulpy adventure story. Set in Ireland, as you can guess, with the Irish name.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
I won't give too much of it away of what happens because
Oh,
it'll probably
no.
so it's not give too much, but essentially it follows a young villager named Damien O'Leary, who's essentially a peasant living in 1940s Ireland, so like at the early 20th century. And in desperation to find work, he's gone digging up this magic sword while he's part of an expedition. There's this English squire named Eric who is looking for this magical sword. And basically, but Damien's determination to find the sword earns the squire's respect for him, and they essentially form a friendship and a bond.
Would have went into that. What you've written there.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. But yeah, oh yeah, a lot of research.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I always admire people that do all that research. So it's great to I'd say it's great to actually have the final product from doing all the research. So well
Yeah.
done with that.
Oh, it is. I
Yeah,
mean, but yeah, that's the second. I mean, there's some others on the way.
hmm
Um, there's some others on the way, but again, it takes time to publish a book like
it
this.
does
But
definitely. Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah.
And have you tried the publishing route at all, Declan? Have you?
Well, I this is one of the reasons why I turned to self-publishing is that I tried going down the mainstream publishing route with a lot of my books, which Blood and Gears most notably. Like this is a book I've actually tried to get published a lot before I self-published it. Indeed, I was a bit afraid to self-publish it because it was quite a big book. Um,
Mm.
and but ultimately, I just kept getting turned down. I just kept getting rejected for various reasons. Or sometimes, like you submit your thing into the void, and it would be like you shoot something out into the void and it doesn't come back. Um, so I mean, I turned to self-publishing because even if it was a hard route, you knew your stuff was going to be out there.
Exactly. Yeah, great stuff. No, it's a great avenue. I think it's a great way to get the stuff out there.
Hmm.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks a lot for coming on and sharing
Thank
all
you.
about the book. That you're always welcome on. It's great to have you back on again. And anything you're doing, just share. I can put on the channel for people to find. And then I wish you all the success with the book as well, Declan.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure we'll meet up like in the Eastlingers every Saturday. The stories that
Hopefully.
you write there are brilliant. Like I look forward to
Yeah,
hearing them
well, a
every
lot of them are
Saturday.
based on manuscripts I've already written. A lot of what I've read during those sessions are based on manuscripts that I've
Great to get
already
a
written.
sneak peek. Great to get a sneak peek
Yeah.
of what you do.
Yeah. Well,
Great stuff. Yeah.
that's what I hope to do. I mean,
But yeah, but listen, but that's a look, and thanks Declan for joining me.
thank you.
So that was Declan Cosson, everybody. Thanks a million for joining me for another episode of the podcast, another interview. So join us again next time and take good care of yourselves. Thanks, Declan.
Bye.
Hello everyone, Mark here. Thank you for watching another episode of my Authors Tuesday podcast. I recently published a book of children's stories called The Adventures of Larry Lamppost and Friends. The book began life as bedtime stories I wrote for my own children. If you'd like to purchase my book, follow the link in the description box below. By buying my book, you are also supporting my podcast series for authors, which is giving a voice to writers in Ireland and across the world.